Diddy is a monster in the way that I'm pretty sure even the devil is like, ooh. Ooh, somebody coming for my job.
Puffy is the real life boogeyman.
I got my MTV out. Savage! I'm a savage! Oh! I'm a savage! Whatever I want, I'm going to get! Whatever I want, I have to get!
Everybody around Puffy was scared of Puffy.
Let's not waste time with fluffy introductions. This isn't about music accolades or fashion brands. This is about an avalanche of allegations against Sean Diddy Combs that span over 3 decades. From trafficking to rape, from freak-offs to revenge porn. Yes, you heard that right. This story has more twists than a Netflix crime docuseries. But hey, let's break it all down. Federal indictments and timeline of charges. Diddy isn't just facing a couple of rogue accusations. No, he's got an entire federal indictment staring him in the face, one that includes nearly 20 separate allegations. These aren't just tabloid fodder. These are serious federal charges involving sex trafficking, racketeering, obstruction of justice, forced labor, and good old-fashioned intimidation. According to federal prosecutors, Diddy's alleged criminal activity goes as far back as the early 1990s. The charges weren't just pulled from thin air. They were brought forward by a grand jury after months of mounting civil suits and survivor testimonies. It's as if Pandora's box got opened with a subpoena. And while we're on the topic of racketeering and trafficking, let's just say the phrase music empire might have been taken a little too literally. Prosecutors claim he wasn't just running a record label, but an enterprise laced with coercion, manipulation, and abuse.
Racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution.
You know, classic industry stuff. If the industry were a dystopian nightmare. What's even more unsettling? The timeliness. Many of these events occurred years ago, yet only now are they being heard. Survivors have spent decades being ignored, silenced, or discredited. But as more brave individuals come forward, the justice system seems finally ready to tune in. About time, huh? Illegal firearms, hotels, and freak-offs. Let's talk about freak-offs, because apparently that's what we're calling alleged drug-fueled sex parties now. Diddy is accused of organizing these twisted events with the help of his inner circle, coercing victims into carrying illegal firearms, booking hotel rooms, and transforming them into literal dens of exploitation.
Diddy also allegedly forced victims to carry illegal firearms, often through coercion and the assistance of his associates working for the Combs enterprise.
This wasn't just a party setup. This was systematic. Hotel rooms were allegedly stocked with baby oil, personal lubricants, drugs, and whatever else was needed to create the perfect environment for abuse. Associates prepared victims while Diddy allegedly called the shots, literally and figuratively. According to survivors, victims were often given sex-enhancing drugs and burner phones. After the events, Diddy's crew allegedly helped them recover with more drugs to dull both physical exhaustion and the trauma of what just happened. You can't make this stuff up.
Suppress the victims, but they also arranged the freak-offs by booking hotel rooms and stocking the rooms with required freak-off necessities like baby oil or personal lubricant.
And if the freak-offs weren't horrific enough, these sessions were allegedly filmed. The implication? These weren't just moments of pleasure or power, they were trophies. Acts of domination captured on camera, possibly to be used later as leverage or blackmail. Charming, right? So next time someone tries to romanticize the glamorous hip-hop after-party, maybe ask, were firearms, manipulation, and sedatives involved? Jane Doe's 2003 accusation. Now we move to a survivor known only as Jane Doe, who says she was raped by Diddy when she was just 17 years old. This incident allegedly took place in 2003 after he flew her across state lines from Michigan to New York, because apparently when you're powerful, you don't just abuse your authority, you book the flight too. Her civil lawsuit details a deeply disturbing story. Diddy allegedly transported her under the pretense of business and then proceeded to violate her while she was still a minor. It's not just an accusation of rape, it's a case of interstate trafficking involving a minor. That's not just morally foul, it's a federal crime. The case paints a picture of a young girl manipulated into a dangerous environment by someone she likely admired or feared, or both. And once again, it follows the now familiar playbook: isolation, coercion, and control. We're not talking about one night of blurred boundaries.
Diddy is also accused of transporting survivor Jane Doe across state lines when he flew her from Michigan to New York in 2003. Jane Doe filed civil suit against Diddy in fall 2023, alleging that 20 years prior, he raped her when she was only 17.
We're talking about orchestrated abuse. What makes this worse is that Jane Doe stayed silent for years. Not because she wasn't telling the truth, but because she knew the truth wouldn't be believed. Or worse, it would be buried. Thankfully, we're in a different climate now, and Jane Doe, she's no longer invisible. Joy Dickerson's allegations from 1991. Joy Dickerson's story brings us all the way back to 1991, before Diddy was a global icon, before Ciroc, before the suits and sunglasses. According to Dickerson, she was raped by Diddy in New York that year. And if that isn't horrifying enough, she says he recorded the assault and showed the footage to others. Let that sink in. An alleged sexual assault not only committed but memorialized on video, then distributed like it was a mixtape. This isn't just criminal, it's monstrous. She claims this tape became a tool of humiliation, a form of revenge porn before the term even existed. This allegation echoes what prosecutors later included in the federal indictment: patterns of sexual violence, power plays, and total disregard for consent. Dickerson also says she never gave permission for the recording, which was shared with multiple people. Her trauma was allegedly broadcast without a shred of humanity.
Diddy recorded this sexual assault. Her lawsuit also argues that she's the victim of revenge porn, as Diddy showed this recording to multiple people without her consent.
And again, this was in 1991. That's how long she's carried this. Imagine having to live with that video being out there for over 3 decades, knowing your pain might be someone else's entertainment. It's a reminder that these stories don't just begin when lawsuits are filed. They begin in silence, in trauma, and often in shame. Joy Dickerson is finally breaking that silence, and the world is finally listening. Cassie, the partner turned survivor. Cassie's lawsuit took the world by storm, and it's no wonder why. For over a decade, she was Diddy's girlfriend, arm in arm at events, red carpets, and music videos. But behind the glitz, a horror story. Cassie alleges that Diddy raped her and forced her to engage in sex acts with male prostitutes while he watched. She also claims he recorded these acts. Let's be clear, this is not some 50 Shades fantasy.
Cassie also alleged Diddy raped her and forced her to have sex with prostitutes, and even recorded this.
This is alleged coercion, exploitation, and abuse. The lawsuit describes years of psychological manipulation, sexual violence, and surveillance. Diddy, she claims, controlled every aspect of her life, her career, her movements, her body. And for a long time, the world watched and applauded their relationship, completely unaware or unwilling to see what was happening. Her story shattered the illusion that proximity to fame equals protection. If someone as visible as Cassie could allegedly suffer in silence for so long, it raises chilling questions about what happens to others who don't have a platform. Cassie's bravery opened the floodgates. Her testimony gave credibility to the other claims and helped spotlight a consistent narrative. Diddy's alleged control didn't stop at contracts. It extended into every corner of people's lives. Pattern of abuse and grooming. Federal documents describe Diddy's actions not as isolated mistakes, but as an orchestrated campaign of control. He's accused of using drugs, violence, and manipulation as weapons, grooming his victims with precision. The indictment outlines repeated instances of emotional, physical, and verbal abuse. Survivors describe extensive grooming, being flattered, isolated, drugged, and then exploited. It wasn't random, it was strategic. One infamous example, the hotel video where Diddy is seen punching, dragging, and kicking Cassie.
Federal prosecutors allege Diddy intimidated these victims into his orbit and then forced them to participate in something he called freak-offs. These freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded.
That clip wasn't leaked by accident. It was a window into the private world survivors have been describing for years. Prosecutors say this was part of a larger pattern, abuse that included beatings, surveillance, and intimidation. Victims were allegedly punished for disobedience, rewarded for compliance, and always kept under psychological control. This wasn't just trauma, it was training. And the consistency across these stories, from Jane Doe to Joy, from Cassie to Lil Rod, shows a disturbing level of organization in the alleged abuse. This wasn't a man losing his temper. This was allegedly a man wielding power with surgical cruelty. Lil Rod's explosive lawsuit.
Another civil suit filed by Rodney Jones, also known as the producer Lil Rod. He began working with Diddy in 2022 on the Love album, and soon, he alleges, the abuse began. Lil Rod accuses Diddy of sexual assault.
Rodney Lil Rod. Jones worked with Diddy in 2022 and walked away with one of the most disturbing lawsuits of them all. He alleges that Diddy sexually assaulted him, groped him, and drugged him. But wait, it gets worse.
The victim of constant, unsolicited, and unauthorized groping and touching of his anus by Mr. Combs. He also alleges Diddy and his team were grooming Lil Rod to engage in gay sex.
Lil Rod claims he was groomed into engaging in gay sex and was frequently violated under the influence. His testimony adds a whole new dimension to the case. It's not just women Diddy allegedly targeted, it's men too. Abuse knows no gender here. He also accuses Diddy of forcing him to have sex with prostitutes and even says he was drugged to make him comply. Again, this isn't about isolated bad behavior. It's about alleged systematic grooming and exploitation.
Lil Rod further alleges that Diddy forced him to have sex with prostitutes and even drugged Lil Rod to get him to comply. On top of these sexual assault allegations, Lil Rod's lawsuit also alleges that Diddy ran a gun and drug trafficking scheme. He says there are hundreds of hours of footage and audio recordings of Mr. Combs.
And like others, Lil Rod alleges that Diddy ran a drug and gun trafficking scheme. Yes, you heard right. The man behind Vote or Die might have allegedly been pushing more than just a political agenda. It's like Scarface meets MTV Cribs, only way less fun. Rod's story cements the idea that this wasn't just a chaotic lifestyle, it was a machine built to break people down and rebuild them into obedient tools of control. Freak-offs revisited and federal abuse claims. As if freak-offs didn't already sound like a bad porno title. Federal prosecutors describe them as fully choreographed sexual performances, directed, managed, and sometimes even recorded by Diddy himself. And no, this wasn't for private fun. It was allegedly for domination. Victims say they were intimidated into participation, drugged, and made to perform sex acts under surveillance. The freak-offs weren't just events. They were psychological warfare. The abuse was so normalized that victims didn't even realize the extent of their trauma until they escaped Diddy's orbit. Some were allegedly kept compliant with a steady stream of cash, drugs, and fear. And the public? We were too busy vibing to Last Night to notice what might have been happening off stage.
Federal prosecutors allege Diddy intimidated these victims into his orbit and then forced them to participate in something he called freak-offs. These freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, masturbated during, and often electronically recorded.
This is not about kink. It's about power, coercion, and calculated abuse dressed up as celebrity indulgence. The freak-offs weren't parties, they were prisons. What's chilling is how many layers of protection seem to surround these alleged acts. Celebrity status, legal muscle, and a wall of silence acted like a fortress. People close to the scene claim they witnessed unsettling things but didn't speak up out of fear or complicity. In some cases, NDAs and hush money reportedly kept lips sealed while trauma festered behind the scenes. Some of the alleged victims describe being flown to remote locations under false pretenses, only to find themselves trapped in bizarre, high-pressure environments where saying no wasn't really an option. Surveillance was everywhere. Phones were taken, movements monitored. There was no room for dignity, only obedience. And the language used, freak-offs, masks the horror with a tone of casual fun, a grim rebranding of abuse as lifestyle.
So during these sessions, Diddy would force victims to use drugs, have sex with prostitutes, and be recorded doing all this, sometimes without their knowledge.
But make no mistake, this wasn't about adult choices. It was about stripping people of theirs. As more stories surface, a picture is forming, not of wild celebrity escapades gone too far, but of a system of exploitation maintained by fame, fear, and silence. So what does this all mean? It means we need to stop idolizing fame at the expense of truth. These aren't just allegations floating in the gossip cloud. These are lives, traumas, stories that were buried for decades under wealth, NDAs, and fear. The timeliness of these charges may seem late, but justice doesn't expire. And maybe, just maybe, the world is finally ready to listen. If you made it this far, thank you. Share this. Speak up. And remember, just because someone's powerful doesn't mean they're untouchable. Hit that like button if you're angry. Subscribe if you're paying attention. Stay loud, stay aware, and never confuse luxury with innocence.